Hello. So today I'm going to go through some of the resources that teachers have for PBLA and looking at some of the rationale and some of the other things that the government has published or that people say about PBLA. And if I have time, then I will also show you the training that teachers have to go through in order to implement PBLA in their classrooms. Okay, right now I'm showing you the language site that the government has published. This is from IRCC, or Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada. PBLA is run through the Centre for Canadian Language Benchmarks, and so they host all of the websites, but I'll let you know if I'm switching back and forth. Okay, so PBLA, the rationale for it. If you've seen my Twitter or my Tumblr page, then you've already seen this first paragraph here where I talked about the development of PBLA and that when it originally came into effect, it was through CIC, or Citizenship Immigration Canada, but they've changed their name. Okay, so it is for language assessment and for language evaluation. So it goes through and explains that assessment and evaluation are different things. It does note that assessment can be more effective for the learners and be more beneficial for them. Okay, so the purposes of PBLA. So traditionally, assessment and evaluation have several purposes. So in class we've talked about diagnostic, formative, summative, and evaluation. And so it goes through and it discusses what all of these things mean. And then it says PBLA builds on the interrelatedness of assessment purposes and is premised on the belief that assessment and evaluation practices should have the following characteristics. They should be central. There should be central classroom practice, benefits to the learners, reflect the curriculum developed and delivered in response to the needs and the goals of the learners, yield accurate and reliable results, which is what I'm looking into, be a part of effective planning, inform the teacher, so that's part of assessment for learning, and enhance exemplary teaching. So then it goes through and talks about what PBLA, or Portfolio Assessment in Language Learning, actually is, and so what PBLA, the Canadian version, has been based upon. So it talks about the European Language Portfolio and the Manitoba Collaborative Language Portfolio Assessment. If you listen to another video or voice recording that I have on the Tumblr page, you'll recognize the Manitoba bit because the lady who was running that project is and was one of the national leads in helping get PBLA started in Canada in 2009. Okay, some other things that I want to show you. Oh, excuse me. Okay. CLB posts lots of great resources for teachers, not only for PBLA, but also for the CLBs. So the PBLA is a form of assessment and evaluation, and it is based on the Canadian language benchmarks, which I will show you now. Okay. So Canadian language benchmarks are something that pretty much all ESL teachers have to have. Across Canada, all ESL, EFT, ELT, WLT, OSLT, EAP, LINK, all of those programs have to use the Canadian language benchmarks. Learners are assessed at a certified test center when they enter Canada, and then they receive a very official paper telling them their benchmarks in reading, writing, listening, and speaking, and then they can go to classes and be placed at appropriate levels. So this is where the assessment or evaluation, in this case, of their levels is very important to be accurate because it really determines what programs they are able to get into. So something to note about the CLBs I'll show you this, for example. So here's an example of a listening benchmark 4. So the way the CLBs are set up, we get a profile of ability. So it tells us what the learner can do at this stage, when the communication is, and then it shows us the strengths and limitations that a learner will demonstrate at this level, or should. When we are creating assessments for PBLA, we have to look at these 4 categories that are at every benchmark in every skill. We have interacting with others, comprehending instructions, getting things done, and comprehending information. The CLBs are also wonderful because you'll notice in these blue boxes on the right, they give you some examples of sample tasks that you can do with your students. So you could do these things and then create your assessment based on some of the examples that are provided for you. So for example, at a listening benchmark 4, the learner should be able to understand short social exchanges containing introductions, casual small talk, and leave taking. And then it gives you some more explanation. And an example of a sample task would be to listen to a discussion about household tasks and determine who will do what. So for example, you may find a YouTube video and play that, a conversation between 2 people discussing who's doing laundry, who's washing the dishes, who's sweeping the floor, who's taking out the garbage. And then you might have 5 questions for your learners, and that would be your assessment. And on all assessments, learners have to get 70% or more in order to be considered having passed or achieved what is required at that level. So this is how the benchmarks are set up at all levels, and it's wonderful. So we always have our profile of ability, and of course, as the benchmarks get higher, you can see that the explanations for the teachers get more substantial and more complicated. All right. So PBLA is based on this. This should help with the reliability of PBLA because all teachers are supposed to be referencing or measuring against or to the CLBs. So whenever you create a sample task or an evaluation, really it's all assessments. So tasks are what they are called. There's skill building and skill using tasks in PBLA. You're always in the CLBs. I had a teacher once tell us that we should buy the book and sleep with it under our pillows because we needed to have the CLBs memorized. Okay, so back to here. If you go to the PBLA link or tab here, you'll see all kinds of videos and information for instructors. And these teaching to task videos are really good. They're just like 15-minute interviews, and they're discussions/interviews about how to teach to task, and how important it is to give your students things that matter to them and things that are real world. So something else, other jargon that comes up in PBLA a lot is real world tasks, and that we're not just teaching them fluffy ideas. Whatever we teach them has to be applicable outside of the classroom. So when you create a skill building task, it has to be based on a real world task. So filling out a form at the doctor's office, calling and registering your child for swimming lessons. Those are real world tasks, and we do evaluate or assess the students on those things. Can they call? Can they make it through the automated messaging system? Stuff like that. And the assessments or the tasks are tailored to the level of the students in your class. So one issue that can arise with PBLA is that if you teach a mixed level class, then you may have to create more than one assessment for the same task, because what a CLB 7 can do and what a CLB 5 can do with the same video or with the same listening assessment is quite different. So a teacher may end up having a substantial amount of work if they have to create multiple assessments for the same task. Okay. This is the Emerging Practices Guidelines document that was published in 2017. And something I found really great was they did have a chart in here about reliability. I'm going to try and find it again, where it broke down. Here we go. Okay, advantages of PBLA. Okay, so it discusses the scope, the authenticity, the validity and reliability, fairness, feedback, positive washback, teacher and learner empowerment, professional development, and practicality and cost or cost effectiveness. So my assignment is looking at reliability. So they say that with PBLA, improves reliability by having more than one assessment by a teacher who is familiar with the student, allows for multiple opportunities for the assessor reflection and standardization. So it is a chance for us to look at them in a longitudinal time frame. It is not one snippet in time. It is over time. Now, I thought it was interesting they also included fairness here. So they say fairness is achieved by following commonly agreed processes, outcomes, and standards, which are the CLBs. And then the standards are provided to us on how to create PBLA assessments. Teacher assumptions about students and their oral language levels are made explicit through collaborative sharing and discussions with other teachers, which is quite true because teachers usually by nature are a very social group and they tend to talk a lot about what's going on in their classroom. And if they're a good teacher, they should be asking others, what are you doing in your class? Or what have you done at this level? Or what would you do with a speaking assessment and whatnot? So this chart is awesome. And it does go through and continue to break down more information about reliability and validity of classroom-based assessment. So assessment by teachers has the potential for providing valid and reliable information about the learner's achievements. And it was found by Wayne Harlan that classroom-based assessments carried out by teachers is both reliable and valid when the programs display a constructive and positive assessment culture, assessment is related to the learner's learning goals, there are clear standards and required protocols, again, PBLA or CLBs and the PBLA structure. There is rigorous procedures for quality assurance. There's access to sufficient and appropriate assessment tasks, tools, and resources. And there is professional development. And I can tell you as someone who's been working with PBLA that many teachers complain that we are over educated about it. So the government has done a wonderful job making sure that there are lots of resources and that professional development happens rigorously. Okay, a couple more things quickly. I have about 1 minute. This website is Tutela, which I've posted on the Tumblr page. If you go in here and look in their PBLA reference materials section, you get lots of great things. You get something called the Language Companion. This is a PBLA binder. All students in Canada get this binder when they join a LINK program, and it's called their Language Companion, and inside it has a bunch of tabs. First it goes through the benchmarks, then it gives you information about vocabulary and all kinds of things. So we have My Canada, Where I Live, Helpful English, Notes, and Portfolio. So for example, you go through the Language Companion and it can be really useful for teachers. And it gives you lots of vocabulary and sometimes even activities that you can do with your students. And if you're someone who is required to create your own objectives or your own themes for your course, the Language Companion for each CLB level is a really good place to start because it goes through what the students are generally required to know at that level. Okay, I must sign off, but I will create another video with more resources.